Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. I want to move to a question. My 4-year-old is doing well with language, but he still sometimes zones out. Because of COVID, we haven't had an in-person evaluation. Could this be ADHD or is it autism, making shifting attention tough? How to work on this? He has had a previous Zoom evaluation diagnosis of ASD. Talk about ways that COVID is making things rougher.
Yeah, absolutely. COVID is making things a lot tougher for us, for our kids, and especially when you're in the phase of trying to figure out what your child's going through and what they need. So there's a big difference between autism and ADHD, and a lot of people confuse it. It becomes a little confusing when the child with autism is very, very high functioning or has almost completed their entire educational ABA program. Because at that point, their needs are not as many as they were. But generally speaking, when you're looking at the diagnosis of ASD, it is not just based on inattention or distractibility. Yes, ADHD and autism will have that both in common, but that's about it. With autism, there's a lot more going on. So it's also a delay in language. Usually there's a delay in communication. That's really important. That differentiates between autism and ADHD. And there's also, because of perhaps that delay in language or communication, there's also a social delay. And what that means is the individual does not know how to interact, does not know how to socialize with others. In fact, has behaviors that are kind of unusual, like not looking when they're talking or those types of things. So none of those things are present in ADHD. In ADHD, it really has more to do with the child on the surface behaves just like other children, but it's difficult for them to stay focused on something that is takes a long time or is not of interest, those types of things. And in some cases of ADHD, there's also a lot of hyperactivity. So that's basically the difference. And, the bottom line is I always tell parents, try not to worry too much about the diagnosis at this point. Either diagnosis will help you get access to funding, but the issue really is that when you just look at what your child needs, look at their symptoms as opposed to kind of the label. What do they need? Are they falling behind on language? Let's teach them some more language skills. Are they falling behind on social? Let's teach them some social skills. Whatever it is that they are in need of, you should be focusing on teaching those particular skills.
Dr. Granpeesheh, I'm a little worried about the phrase zoning out, though. Do we need to be cautionary here? Because could it? I hate to scare people, but should we make sure that we're not having absence seizures?
Yeah, of course it's very possible. I guess it's so common for parents to say that to me, Shannon, that it's like one of those things that you hear all the time. So yes, Shannon has a very good point. Sometimes you just want to make sure neurologically your child is not having seizures. And it is possible to have a seizure during the day and not for the only overt external way that others see it is zoning out. So in other words, the child is just not present. That could be a seizure. On the other hand, it could also just be the child drifting away, daydreaming, drifting away in his own thoughts, just because the outside environment is either boring or difficult to understand or overwhelming. And I totally get that. Right? Like if I'm in a situation where I'm not understanding the language fluently, I will zone out. If I'm in a situation where I have the other thing also to think about with our kids is that a lot of our kids get very poor sleep. And if you're not sleeping, you're going to zone out multiple times during the day. So there's so many other reasons that a child could be zoning out, and it's important really to pay attention to those things.
And I also want to say I'm a creative person. I zone out to get over in the part of my brain that's creative to create something, to write something or whatever. So I just want to make sure that we're not that I'm not saying that it's always a bad thing, but I do think with an abundance of caution, they recommend that we get our kids a baseline what is it, an EEG, or what is that called when they
Yeah,
do the brainwave?
electroencephalogram. Yeah, it's just that many of you may have already had an EEG. It's just they put electrodes on various parts of your head and measure the brain waves. And that's just to be sure that absent seizures are not happening. Absent seizures basically means seizures that don't have other physical or motor symptoms. So in other words, like regular seizures, you will have overt looking, like you'll shake, you'll fall down, you'll close your eyes, you'll pass out for a few minutes, that kind of stuff. With absent seizures, there's brain activity that is unusual, but it is not severe enough to, it's not like a grand mal seizure where it will show in other ways.
Right. So it can easily be missed.
Yes.
But it's important.
Absolutely. Sometimes our kids are having seizures at night that we don't even know. It's true.
And a lot of people recommend for our kiddos when they're younger to get a baseline EEG. And even if you don't find anything there, because there's a higher percentage of our kids that later on will end up having a seizure or being deemed having epilepsy. And if you have that baseline seizure or baseline EEG, it will always help you. It's miserable. I don't think anybody wants to do it, Dr. Granpeesheh. But I was told to do it. I did not do it. One of my best friends was told to do it. She did not do the baseline, and her child now has epilepsy, and she wishes she had the baseline. I'm sorry that we didn't do it.
Yeah. It's just people don't do it because, first of all, it's difficult to access providers who are going to do it. Secondly, it's like, difficult to actually, those are sleep EEGs, and sleep EEGs you got to do overnight, and you have to kind of have, the child has to stay at the center. It's like a nightmare. Now I think they've developed systems that you can actually connect and be in your own home.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just, and the reason to have it is because, Shannon, you are right. Seizures usually do develop, if they're going to develop, they develop later. And so it is possible that a young child will not have seizures, but then they will develop seizures in their teens. Those types of things are possible. But I want all of our viewers to realize that having seizures is a very small percentage of our kids. It is not all that common. I don't want everybody to get scared here.
Thank you.
Zoning out is very common with our kids, and a lot of times, honestly, it's because they don't understand what's going on. So they're just trying to keep themselves interested, or they're daydreaming.
Yeah. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.